Cultivated Marketer, episode 36, Social Media and Being Conscientiously Curious with Valerie Morrow. In this episode of Cultivated Marketer, you're going to want to tune in as we talk with the Director of Social Media at Dairy Farmers of America, Valerie Morrow. In it, we talk not just the creative side of things, we talk the science of social media as well, and being conscientiously curious, how to develop good KPIs, how to sell social media programs within your organization, how to develop your goals. It's an amazing conversation that marries both the art and the science of social media and how you want to think through that and work within your organization to become a better communicator or a better marketer. So you'll definitely want to check this episode out with Valerie Morrow. Okay, Julie, Matt, we're having this conversation. Some of this conversation was a little bit, I'm going to be honest with you, because I had the chance to visit with Valerie a lot at Digital Summit in Minneapolis about a month back. And so there were some things nuggets from that conversation. I said, when we get together to talk on the podcast, we're discussing these things. So some of this was not a surprise, but some of the elements that she brought forward, even just her close around professional development and some of the ways we should be thinking about professional development and goal setting really were highlights for me in that conversation we just, we're going to have with Val here and share with everybody.
Yeah, sometimes we look for little clips that I know that your great production team there will put together for us on social with a little, just a bit of a sound bite. I've got like 7 things written down. So whoever does that will have, without vision, we perish, and just so many great factoids. And again, her focus on strategy. And I know, Julie, you're always reminding us on LinkedIn, guys, we got to think strategy, not tactics. Mm-hmm. Boy, talk about somebody who personifies that so well. I just thought it was a great conversation. What a super smart marketer. Really glad we had her on.
Yeah, I really like how she talked about what she encourages her team to do. And I'm probably not going to say this right, so you can get it directly quoted from the podcast. But she talked about how she encourages her team to be curious, but through the lens of basically their strategic plan. What are they actually trying to accomplish? So you can have all the ideas you want or think about all the trends you've seen out there. But let's put that lens on that idea, put that lens on that thought of what are we actually trying to accomplish here? What's our strategy? And I thought that was a really good way to say that. So she's sharp.
Yeah. Was that was the point in the conversation where we were talking a little bit about the Taylor Swift orange moment, right? And
that's right.
Right.
That's
and
right.
so, and I think it was consciously curious? We'll get it direct from her, but I think it might have been, was it consciously curious?
Consciously curious.
Yeah.
Be consciously curious. And I think I need to write that down and
another good
put it on my
soundbite.
computer.
Yeah. The other soundbite I took from her is block and protect. Having led and started some social media teams or large brands, it's not just about going viral. And sometimes it's about protecting the brand. It gets almost to that Amy Whitfield conversation. It's about monitoring and listening for the things that are being said, and then even blocking and protecting the brand. She talked about it, I think, more in relationship to blocking and protecting your own space, which is, I just think is a good professional development lesson. But I think even in the world of social media, I'm even watching some of the things that have just happened within the last week where certain people are coming out and speaking one way or another, and it becomes almost a crisis comm situation. And ultimately social's a fulcrum for that, right?
Yeah.
So hearing her use that term block, I need to put the block and protect sign up above.
She said focus. She says I don't remember how she said it, but she said success comes from being focused. And I thought I needed to hear that today. So
well, I'm just so glad that she emphasized just like all of our other marketing channels that have been around for decades, right? We have to put the same level of strategic focus on social media. I think so many, and we talk about this a bit in the show, but so many of the social media success stories that we see from much earlier, maybe in the platform's development, were frankly things that brands sort of lucked into.
Mhm.
And I think the admonition from Valerie and the experts in this field are, no, you have to, luck's great, but I'll take preparation and strategy any day. And
Yes.
she spent a lot of time on that, which I'm glad she did.
And I appreciate the two of you allowing me to do a little bit of a deep dive with her with respect to AI, because
Oh, no, that was fascinating.
That was good.
I think that whole notion of, to extend that further, Matt, that whole conversation around social media being a strategic platform is even going to take on greater weight now, as we're seeing the LLMs start to use it as the primary citation sources. And so we got into that conversation a little bit about Reddit, but the other one is Wiki. The Instagram's being pulled into the indexing now. Pinterest is a top. So there's going to be more strategic intent that needs to go into, and she hit on it about being audience first, right? And answering the audience's questions. The way social media is going to be used is going to be vastly different 5 years from now than the way it was 5 years ago.
That's right. That's right.
So any other final thoughts? Just so much to unpack in that conversation with her.
Really
I actually think I'm going to have my intro to marketing students listen to this and write a paper for extra credit because it's that good.
It won't be the first time a class has heard a Cultivated Marketer episode. I will tell you that, Julie, because I've got a whole catalog of clips that my crew hears. They probably get tired of it. But
that's how I got listening to this podcast back when I was at KU. Yep.
And what our listeners can't see is me smiling like the Cheshire Cat at that statement itself.
Prince brand plan.
Steepling my fingers together.
Tomorrow the world.
All right. On that note, we've just devolved into silliness. So with you two, I've always appreciated the time. I appreciate the partnership.
You bet.
We'll jump into this conversation with Valerie Morrow, talking about social media and so much more. Hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Welcome to Cultivated Marketer, where we talk marketing professional development so your garden of opportunity grows. This is Brent Bowen.
I'm Matt Tidwell.
And I'm Julie Masson.
And our guest this time is a seasoned social media leader with nearly 15 years of experience driving engagement for both brands and agencies. She holds a Master of Arts in Mass Communications from the University of Central Missouri, where she largely focused her coursework on corporate and organizational communication. But now she's the director of social media at Dairy Farmers of America, the nation's largest dairy cooperative. She leads a team focused on blending data, and I know because I've sat in on her session at Digital Summit, storytelling's a big focus, and she does that to build engaged online communities. Tremendous about that. So I'm really excited to get into this. She is also, as I mentioned, Digital Summit. She is also a frequent speaker and educator in digital marketing. And it took us like 19 times at Digital Summit to finally cross paths. And I got very passionate about that first time meeting because I tracked her down with some determination. And after we talked to her, you're going to understand why. Valerie Morrow, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, Valerie, welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. Just a really fascinating topic. We can't wait to get into it, but maybe we should start a bit at the beginning. You've got nearly 15 years of experience in social media. I know that's both across agency and brand environments. Could you share a little bit about your career journey? Like what first drew you to focus more on social media, and were there some pivotal moments in there that shaped that direction a bit?
Yeah, I love the idea that sometimes you choose your career and sometimes your career chooses you. And in my case, it was the latter. And so I was sharing with Brent when we met that I was doing my coursework, master's program at University of Central Missouri in Warrensburg. And I always knew that I wanted to do something business, and I knew that I wanted to do something communication, but I wasn't quite sure where that skinny shaded area was. And so my dad and mom were both executive recruiters and always taught me to be very solution oriented. And so that's the approach that I took to finding the career path that would fulfill me,
but also that would fulfill a need for a business or an organization. And so started talking to chief marketing officers, VPs of marketing, and said, over the next 10 years, because at the time, 10 years felt like a long time, said, over the next 10 years, what's a marketing challenge that you feel like you're going to have that today you feel wholly unprepared to solve? And this was 2010, 2011, and that was when social media was really emerging. And so they said, this social media thing, it's loud, it's scary, we don't know what to do with it. And if you can tell us what to do with it, you have a job. And so I went all in, pushed all the chips on the table, and just started to learn everything I could about social media and fell in love with it, both from the community and storytelling aspect that Brent referenced, but also what it could do to build a brand and to build really an audience in a different way that a lot of the tools in the current toolbox in the landscape just couldn't quite touch.
Oh, great.
Wow. I'm fascinated by the question you asked back then, that you were thinking ahead and thinking, these are the people I need to ask to get input from. That shows some serious critical thinking and planning ahead and ambition, all things I like. So Brent tells us that you're known for blending data and analytics, like he said earlier. And when I hear data and analytics and storytelling, I don't necessarily think those two go together. I mean, I've seen it done well, and clearly you're doing it well. So can you walk us through an example where analytics helped refine a narrative and where a storytelling approach improved social media performance? Because I think that's fascinating. And I think it's not something that we readily associate as two things going together, data and analytics and storytelling.
Right. A lot of people think that it feels very oil and water. And I really think that they're two magnets that are meant to attract. And that when you really look at those in each of their own spheres, but when you bring them together, they tell that full, complete story. And so there's often times where I think we're so focused on the content of the page and getting the next post up or planning for the next campaign that we often don't take time to really reflect on how things performed, why things performed. And so I have had to learn in my career really blocking and protecting time to do that by myself, and also inviting others into that place and space. And when I started to do that with my team and a couple of the folks within our broader department who help us bring that social story to life. So we have a creative team that has editorial and creative support. And when we started to look at that, at the time when I joined DFA in 2019, we didn't have a blog space. And so telling long form stories was both a need to help humanize the brand, but it was also a challenge in everybody saying bite size things, or, the thing that every marketing conference started with of everybody has the attention span of a goldfish. And we really pushed back on that narrative and said, I think that if the content is good enough and the story is interesting enough, people will continue to read. But over time, and as the algorithms changed, we really saw an opportunity to take that long form story that we were putting in the copy and say, how do we take that into video? And not video that is overly produced, that has a huge production budget, that just allows people to see and hear and feel a different human being. And so what we started to do was we have 10,000 farmer owners, and we said, can we just find 10 of them that can use an iPhone or an Android, and can we give them a topic and a little bit of an outline and let them tell their story? And so we created a group of farmer owners who do that regularly, and then they either share content on their own page or we share it and use the collab feature within Instagram. And it creates a need that we can't get sitting in an office in Kansas City, Kansas, but it also elevates and amplifies the humanity of what people are really looking for when they're in that social environment. And so we took the data of what we were seeing perform in those long form stories, and we took the innovation and the idea of storytelling and said, why couldn't it come from the people and the places that we're really trying to steward anyway? And it's been really fun, both to watch them be well received, but also to watch them grow in their own confidence of coming up with ideas and meeting us in new ways and getting more confident in front of the camera. And so it's just been really fun.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question that I wasn't planning on asking, but I have to ask it. Was it a challenge to convince your leaders of this strategy, or did the analytics that you had, is that what you were able to use to convince your leaders this is the strategy, this is the path we need to take?
Two parts to that. So yes, the data of what we were seeing and what we thought was possible. And then the other thing we did is we found these creators knowing that they were farmer owners to begin with and knowing that they had a little bit of a social presence. And so we actually did a three-wave approach. One is we pulled a couple of examples that already existed to say they have the potential. Like, do you see the seed? We pulled a couple of examples of performing posts that had done well, but started to identify some areas where we just weren't able to quite grasp that next level of storytelling because it just felt two-dimensional, and we wanted to invite them into the 3D. And then the third wave was we found a couple of examples from within our own industry and a couple from outside to say, this is visually what we're really trying to achieve. And we've seen other people do it, but we think we can bring our own flair and flavor to that. And so that kind of layering approach of this is what we know is out there. This is where our glass ceiling is. And this is how we've seen others do it well, but where we think we have room to ramp up in our own way was enough for them. And also to just say, we just really want to start on a really small scale. Dairy Farmers of America has been incredible. And why I have been there 6.5 years is that if you have a good idea and you're able to articulate the element of evolution that you see, and the risk is one that is a calculated risk, they're all for it. And so that's really where, when you are looking for a place that you want to be, my 92-year-old grandma asks me two questions when we talk about work. She said, are you learning and are you still having fun?
I love that.
Good questions.
And if those two questions exist in equal weight, then you know that you are still where you're supposed to be. And so 6.5 years later, we're still learning and we're still having fun.
Full circle, data and storytelling to sell it in, and
Right
data
there.
and data and data and storytelling from grandma too. That's great.
Yep.
She is a wise lady. You don't get to 92 by accident.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of wisdom there. Yeah, that's great. I mean, the thing that resonated with me in terms of you're talking about that project is the authenticity piece. You're letting your own members, your own owners tell their story, right? And so many times, gosh, I can remember even pre-social media days. I don't know if any of you guys had this experience, but HR would say, okay, we got to go out and shoot photos of our employee, or we need photos of our employees, right? So they'd bring me stuff, and it was always the stock photo of the cheesy people around the desk. I finally went to my CEO and said, can we just please hire a photographer and we'll just send them around and shoot people in our own offices? But the pushback was, oh no, let's just we'll just use stock photography. And oh God, if I see another cheesy. So anyway, long story. I got off on a tangent. Great job out of you guys using your own people to tell the story, because that's what authenticity is all about. So
yeah, it's incredible.
Love that. Hey, the social media landscape, though, shifts so rapidly. My gosh, I mean, all the platforms that, 10 years ago were here, now they're gone. And even more recently, we've seen platforms move in and out. How do you so whether it's the platforms or just the genre itself, how do you try to stay ahead? What practices help you kind of separate enduring principles from, again, those passing trends and fads that we see so often in this space?
Yeah, you're right. Social media is shifting constantly. And I found that the best way to keep up is really to focus on the people and not the platforms. And what I mean by that is by focusing on both your audience first and what they want and why they're there and how you can show them more of what you already know works, and the people that you are trying to influence within your organization, whether that is bringing others into the social realm of what it is that you're trying to create or your leadership. There's work to be done in both spaces. And when you're really focused on what is it that our goal is, and knowing those goals and believing those goals and trusting those goals, it makes it so much easier to let what is not meant for you fall away, and it brings into clarity and alignment what is meant for you. And so if something pops up, we'll test it in a small way if we feel like it's one that's going to actually work. A great example of that is the Taylor Swift album. When it came out, you will not see anything orange on our page. There was a moment where you look at it and you kind of say, I want it to be for us, but it's just not.
You're so tempted, weren't you?
Yes, right. I mean, being from Kansas City and, all the things. And we thought about, do we have a product for this? Or what if we made a cow orange? Or where's the orange thread? And you know what? It wasn't for us. And so you just let it fall. And then the analytics close the loop because we're always looking at what worked and what didn't and why. And that's what helps separate a passing fad from something that really changes how people interact with the content. So it really is a mix. It's staying curious. That's something that I really encourage my team to do. I really say, I want you to be curious, but I also layer in, I want you to be consciously curious. And that layer is specifically for, I want you to keep the strategic bifocal lens over whatever it is that you're viewing, and not just saying, that's cool, that's funny, that's neat, but does it fit really what our audience and what our leadership sees as something that we're driving and that we're building?
Yeah. As a quick follow-up, how do you determine or how do you research kind of the platforms that your primary stakeholders are on? Do you do that research actively? Is it just sort of observational? How does that come about?
I think it's both. I think, that's a place where, again, I use the phrase block and protect often because there is so much ground that we can cover as social media professionals that you have to decide what's important, but you also have to remind yourself that there is something really good and right about doing that research. And sometimes it can feel mindless. And so I usually try to create or name the goal that I'm trying to accomplish in that time. And I say, I'm going to scroll with the mindset that I'm looking for XYZ. So I'll block time and I'll sit in a room with the trending audio and I'll actually just listen to it with my eyes closed. And the reason that I'm doing that is I'm trying to see the video that is not yet created. Or when I close my mind, where does my imagination take me using that conscious curiosity of the overlay of our strategy? So I'm thinking about our audience. I'm thinking about maybe the footage that we have or a piece of the business. And when you close your eyes, you can kind of start to see something thread together, and it's kind of fuzzy, but then it comes into view. And then also going to conferences and talking to people. I think so often, and the very first part of my career, I thought that the most important thing was total autonomy, was to not have anybody look at my strategy or read my copy. I just thought if no one had the keys to the kingdom and it was just me posting, I had made it. And then I realized that there's actually something really good and right about synergy in that too. And so it wasn't just autonomy, it was who else can I bring into what I'm creating so that they can see it and get excited about it as well? Who can I galvanize to join me? Because it's much more fun to go on a road trip with friends than it is to drive 24 hours all by yourself.
On that whole notion of road trips with friends,
let's go on one, Brent.
Let's go on. Let's
Unless you eat corn nuts, and then we are not in the same car.
Sounds like my wife.
I don't think I've touched a corn nut since a canoe trip, probably in southern Missouri. So it's been probably a couple. Yeah. It's where you eat. Yeah. It's probably been a couple decades.
Soggy bag.
Soggy bag. And it was last. And if you get dumped in the canoe, it was the last item you saved. You saved your oars first and then your canoe partner second, I think was the order we had for that. But in this whole notion of road trips with friends, right? You mentioned one of these. So there's a lot of my clients that I'm working with. There's a lot of renewed interest in SEO, and a lot of that has to do with artificial intelligence, the chat bots you and I saw this at Digital Summit. It was standing room only to get into the AI search conversations, to hear some of the speakers talk about them. Some of gold for that was some of the long form storytelling you mentioned, the blogs, video. But more recently, and I actually was sharing this with the client now, there's always been a bit of a symbiotic relationship, that road trip kind of galvanization with social media and SEO, but we're even seeing more of that. Just in the last couple of weeks, Google announced that it was going to start indexing Instagram, right? So beyond what you're thinking about when you do this visualization exercise, how much are you now considering what's going into visibility? Like, I've had more PR practitioners in the last couple of weeks start inquiring about SEO services and what can be done there. How much of that is going into your thinking now about not just trying to connect with humans from an organic or paid standpoint, but you're feeding visibility in a different way, whether it be traditional search or AI search?
Yeah, the update for Instagram is huge because for the first time, it blurs the line between social and search. And so it's really changed and evolved the way that we produce content. And so I think the way that we produce content now is that every post has two lives. It has one on the Instagram feed where it needs to spark some sort of interaction and engagement, and then one on Google where it needs to answer the kinds of questions that people are searching for. And so if you design with both in mind, the conversation for your audience, but also the intentional search, you get content that performs today and keeps working tomorrow.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was wondering if you were going to go back to the North Star of all this is still audience first, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of being maybe a bit more intentional about asking a question and answering a question.
Yeah. And so that's one where I think you have to, for the longest time, while we all serve different functions on a team and in a marketing organization, I'm so passionate that social deserves the right to be at the table in planning and in process and in follow-up meetings and those types of things. But oftentimes, and especially if we have distanced ourselves from it for such a long time, to say, I'm social, I'm not search, I don't do SEO. We actually have to be honest and vulnerable and say, the last time that we touched search is probably the same time that a lot of people last touched social media. And so you find that a lot of people still approach social media from 2015. And I think if we, as social media marketers, were honest with ourselves, we would probably still approach search with a 2015 mindset. And so I think we have to be vulnerable and honest with ourselves and say, do I really know what is different since the last time that I intentionally was involved in SEO? And that, for me, as both a people leader and a strategic mind within our organization, those are questions that I'm asking myself. So I can say, I understand and I will plan differently, but I need to go all the way back to 10 years ago when those things were a little bit closer together and really say, what do I not know? And so those are the type of questions, reintroducing ourselves to our marketing team and saying, what tools are we using? And can you help me connect these two thoughts? Because I think we all have that kind of gut of where we would like to go. But again, knowing the data points that we're really looking at to weave those things together. And so I think we're looking at the inside the app is that focusing on interaction, meaning that the posts that invite comments or direct messages or the captions that really ask a genuine question. But we're also in the captions starting to seed some of those layers of searchability. So I like to think about how someone might Google a topic and make sure that language or caption or even the alt text. I feel like we as marketers sometimes get really lazy with alt text, but that is a place where those clear, natural keywords in the captions and the descriptive copy on the graphic helps posts live beyond Instagram. And who wouldn't, for as much love and inspiration as we put into a social post, that sometimes, us and however many other people see it, like how much better would it be if we're actually able to Google what we hoped that post accomplished to see it in the results. So it's really about creating content that's conversational enough to invite interaction, but intentional enough to carry SEO weight once it leaves the app.
Yeah, once it leaves the app. And even then, you had me, and again, this may be a conversation you and I have to have on the side as somebody that spent more time in the SEO. Again, having that 2015 view of social media, once you started talking about the collaboration features of Instagram, I was thinking about, oh, I hadn't even thought about that from a standpoint of implications for SEO. That is how interesting. I'm going to have to unpack that once the conversation's over today. It's thinking, it's having all this grows and evolves. So that's very curious how we're going to see how we're collaborate. Been a little distant cousins in a marketing org, but seeing how this is coming together is really going to be fascinating.
Yeah, distant cousins who are frequently more at the same table at the family reunion, it sounds like. So,
yeah, coming together.
I love this. Yeah. I love this deep dive. This is great on this topic. But maybe just shifting just slightly, because I know I think it's just so cool that you're doing so much now in the area of speaking and educating in digital marketing. We talked about how you're on the circuit for the terrific digital marketing summits that are around the country. We need to get that back in Kansas City. I don't know, Ben, who we need to talk to, right? But I miss it in so many ways. When we have good events here too, but that was such a good one. But anyway, in those roles, what are the most common challenges or misconceptions that you encounter when you're at the front of the class, let's say, teaching social strategy? Do those exist, those kinds of misconceptions or challenges?
Yeah, they absolutely do. I think we've hit on a couple of them already, but one of the biggest misconceptions I see is that social strategy is more than just posting or chasing trends. So people are often surprised when I tell them that success usually comes from focus, and it's actually doing less, but doing it with more purpose. And so choosing to be, just because I tell people all the time from stage or when they ask questions, just because a platform exists does not mean that you have to be on it. Again, it all goes back to that audience, and are they there, and do you have something to say, and do you have the right way to say it? I think, again, in that 2015, we did have a little bit of leniency of rinse and repeat and taking content from one platform and putting it on the other, but that doesn't work anymore. And so I think, again, I use the word honor really intentionally, honoring the capacity that you have as a marketer, knowing your resources and knowing what you can do excellently is much better than trying to put all of the little icons at the bottom of your email signature.
I think that's such an important point. I'm so glad that you focus on the purpose piece of that, because I think so many times we hear about great social media case studies from brands, and it almost seems like they always sort of like lucked into it, right? Like I was talking with students today in my class about the VML managed the Wendy's account a few years ago, and they got the most retweeted tweet in history when the kid said, hey, how many retweets do I need? In fact, a graduate of our AMC program, Pat, was on the agency team at VML that did that. But when he came in, a lot of it was just luck, right? They were cruising and they found this little, this, again, innocuous 12-year-old who said, hey, how many retweets do I need to get free nuggets? And then it ended up being whatever, 38 million, and it set a record.
Nugs for Carter.
Yeah, nugs for Carter, right. But again, the students kind of look at me like, oh yeah, they just sort of lucked into that. Somebody was cruising and saw it. So your point is we may have some luck in there, but we should be purposeful as well. I think that's huge.
Yeah. And that, it really comes, I think, the difference between a good marketer and a great marketer is oftentimes leaving space for the things that seem really mundane, but that often move the mundane to the magical. And that is creating space and holding space to do things like researching and looking at data and listening and going after something. And it's so much not to, I think oftentimes we just get in that hamster wheel of creating content. And we're so focused on looking down that we forget to look up and out. And we miss, if we're on a road trip, we miss all the cool things on the side of the road because we're just focused on where we think we're supposed to go. And I don't know if there's a lot of type A marketers out there like me, but I have had to learn that there is beauty in the detours.
That's good. Beauty in the detours is so good.
I feel like becoming a mom really helped with that.
Yes, that'll do it for sure. When I'm working with nonprofit clients, almost to a T, every single one of them will see social media as this silver bullet.
Yeah.
And they want to be on all the platforms and they think they should be on all the platforms. So I really love that you said you don't need to be doing everything you see your competitors doing. I mean, you didn't say that, but that's essentially what you're saying and reminding our audience of. So I think that's really helpful. So when you think about what's coming next with social media strategy, what do you think is coming? Do you think the next big shift is going to be AI powered tools, community focused social platforms, or something else entirely? I know you're doing a lot with community building, and I know you cannot predict the future. I understand that, but you seem really sharp. So you maybe have an in on something. So tell us the deets.
Mark the tape.
The take. Man, if I had a crystal ball, I think I'd still be working in social media. I'd just be doing it more pro bono. I think that the next big shift is not going to be a shiny new platform or tool. I really think it's going to be how AI, community, and trust all come together.
Ooh, I like that.
AI is definitely changing the way that we work. It is helping us create content faster. It's helping to analyze what resonates. But I don't think that AI replaces the human side of storytelling. And if anything, it makes the human piece more important because audiences are going to be craving what feels real and personal. And at the same time, you can see that pendulum swing back toward community, right? People are tired of shouting in the void and they want a space where they can actually connect and belong. And it's why you're seeing things like private group chat, close friends list, and these niche platforms really gaining traction. I know, just think about the explosion that we've seen in the Reddit communities and the threads of not Threads, the platform from Meta, but threads within Reddit where people are really looking for like-minded. They're looking at all of the different subreddits. And so I think that the big shift is going to be this blend, and who can do that well in a space where things are moving so quickly, but the untrained eye is becoming very trained. And it's saying if a business or a brand is going to rely on AI, that's not who I am and what I'm about. And so AI is helping us to be smarter and more efficient, but with a renewed on building authentic human connection. And that brand that can marry those two are really going to be the ones that stand out.
Julie had you look forward. I'm going to have you look back a little bit. So at the open, we were chatting about your master's experience, and you had the benefit of applying grandma's learning theory here, right? So you had the benefit of being able to speak to multiple chief marketing officers through this kind of almost tour informational interview experience. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? And that clearly got you into your social media role and the social media side of the industry. But what were some of the other key takeaways or insights that you took from that experience?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about my parents at the beginning. They are by far one of the greatest influences in my life. My dad gave me the two most important books in my life. Number one was the Bible, and number two was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that book, along with so many others that I read, just got me thinking about, again, being very solution oriented, or as my dad liked to say from when I was about 9 years old, without vision, we perish. And it feels heavy, but it also feels really exciting about what do I want to build? Where do I want to go? And who knows more than me who can help me get there? I am a huge believer in everybody knows between 10 or 12 people that they could think of in their own life that somebody else should also know. And there is no greater joy in my life than taking someone that I know who doesn't know somebody over here and saying, I think you two should meet because I think you would have a lot of fun. And then I like to jump in the mix. And then we've got our little, 3-friend cohort to go on all sorts of little road trips and bunny trails with. But I think really, really being brave, right? To say, here's what I know, but here's what I don't know. And I think that there's so much we can learn by really honoring and learning from other people's experience. And so we talked about people that we mutually knew by not even knowing each other, right? And just seeing who we knew from the time that we knew, but also saying, now that you know me and a little bit of where I'd like to go and my heart and what you know that I'm good at, is there anybody in your circle who you feel like I should meet and connect with? And you have to earn the right to ask that question, but being really intentional about asking that. And then also, one of the things that I loved at University of Central Missouri was they were first starting in like 2011, 2012 of recognizing that not everybody wanted to go down the terminal PhD thesis type route. And so they added the practical professional option within the master's program. And so I think if you're looking at higher education, making sure that it's something that fits for you, that if you are going to continue a degree, that it offers enough freedom and flexibility where you're not so tied into what they think, but what you see as something that you want to continue to build. I just got to interview somebody for a job posting that we had, and they did their master's in 2025. And just the list of coursework was miles different than when I was in school. I was like, these courses would be so very helpful, right? But just taking that approach and that posture of being a lifelong learner and knowing that there's always more to learn, and that I talk about it, Brent, in Digital Summit. Albert Einstein had a great quote, and he said, if I had an hour to figure out the question of the world, I would spend 55 minutes asking the right questions, because if you ask the right questions, you can find the right solutions. And so it's really asking good questions of people who are smarter than you. If you're the smartest one in the room, it's not a great room to stay in.
Yeah. What I love about what you said too is finding the right people to ask those questions of. That's so beautiful in this connected world where we need more connectedness. No, I absolutely appreciate you sharing that.
Okay, Valerie, before we go, is there anything else you want to share with us? Also, where can we connect with you? I just found you on LinkedIn before this episode. And if there's any public links of where you've spoken, I, for one, would love to see that.
Goodness.
So yeah, let us know how we can connect with you and just anything else you would like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best spot to connect. A lot of my speaking is with Digital Summit and through other, unfortunately, paywalled, because they're either part of a conference package, but love doing things like this. I'm going to be on another podcast with University of Central Missouri in a couple of weeks, so that'll be fun. So maybe it's the start of a new road trip. I think one thing that we didn't talk about and that I think is really important, especially if you are leading a team or you're an individual contributor who's been asked to present and map your own goals. One thing that I am really passionate about is managing up and also not feeling like you need to revamp your social goals year over year. And so what I mean by that is I invite my team to think about, how do we take what we know is working, and where are places where we would like accountability in evolving into something new, or what is on the other side of that? And so it doesn't mean that we're creating new goals every year. It's that we are taking what's working and we're layering and we're learning and we're innovating. And that oftentimes gets us into some of those conversations where it says, and in order for that to happen, here's what we need to get from this to this. And those are really important conversations, because sometimes you get into positions where leaders can't quite articulate a goal for social media because they don't fully understand what it can achieve. And so it's our job, in the absence of that, or to kind of come alongside and say, here's what I think I can accomplish. Here's how I see it connecting to our department or our division goals. And here's how it ladders up into our mission, vision, value of the organization that we work for. And again, when you're able to provide that kind of layering or Russian nesting doll type approach, it really gives leadership the confidence to be able to say yes to helping you where you are to get where you think that you can be. And always start small to prove that you can do a lot with a little, and then more will be added and more will be added. But they'll actually thank you so much to say, thank you for helping us put goals and measurable things in place. And we don't do that for a whole year. We do that by what we think we can affect, by what we can control. So very rarely are they fully rooted in, things like, again, some of those vanity metrics or different things, but we just say, here are some ways that we think we can evolve. And we usually do that around a goal of content. So what's a place in our content world that we can evolve? Where can we do that in collaboration with another team or department within the cooperative? And what is something we think we can drive community? So that's both community for our farmer owners, but also communities that we're stewarding in the social space. And those three at least get you, I say usually, if you do 30, 30, and 30, it at least gets you 90% there. And then you should have one professional goal where you say, I'm going to spend time in Reddit, because even though I don't understand it, I see something good and right and evolutionary there where I know that I should be. So that's
it's a gold mine. I will tell you, it's a gold mine.
Come on. Well, we need to have a little side convo, because
it's a weird gold mine, but it's a gold mine.
It's a gold mine. Yeah.
I'm crawling in there and I'm wallowing and I see the goodness and I know that it's there. And so I'm excited to become a full-fledged Reddit with some legs on.
Top cited source in AI search is Reddit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
More than 40% of AI searches are coming from the sourcing's coming from Reddit, because the most authentic conversations are happening there.
Oh.
That's where I go when I need actual how to. I will go to Reddit.
Yeah.
You can get some great searches.
The grassiest of grassroots.
Yes.
There you go. That's right.
Well, I'm excited to get some grass stains.
Yeah. As am I. And Val, I couldn't tell you how I couldn't be more happy that we, as a show ultimately about professional development, you finish this off with goal setting for both individual and team, and then being able to communicate those to stakeholders who may not understand exactly what you do. So I couldn't think of a better way for us to cap off the show. I can't tell you also how much we've truly enjoyed this conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time joining us today and speaking a bit about your career journey, social media, and ending it off with some continued learning and professional development. Really appreciate the time today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie. This is great.
Yeah, thank you, Val.
If you found value in today's episode, check us out on our website, cultivatedmarketer.com. You'll also be able to subscribe to us, rate us, and leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Remember, a garden of opportunity grows with Cultivated Marketer.